Amanda.
I'm Ben.
We're AutoSave. Welcome to our channel.
Today we're watching Jujutsu Kaisen, Season 2, Episode 16. This is going to be an interesting one.
I'm excited. I was gonna say I'm nervous, but then I decided to go with the emotion that's like a little bit greater in the moment, which is excitement.
You know, like, typically in this show, and any, there are moments that ramp up that you feel like, okay, next episode, this fight or this interaction is going to be crazy. But there's a chance that we could be following a B plot or a C plot where
Very true.
it would divert and change, point of view for that episode, and you don't get to see that interaction. In the A, B, and C plot in this show right now, I am freaking out and need to know what's about to happen. So
in every single direction.
Am ready.
We're happy with anything that we get.
Also, on the screen right now is episode 15, and it's a scene where Sukuna is like pointing, and you can see his like purple fingernail polish. Looks so cool. I wish I could look that cool with purple fingernail polish.
Agreed. But what also is cool is the line that he's saying in this moment.
I see you value your head quite lightly. Yeah.
Yeah. Scary.
Ready?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, that was Jujutsu. I don't even know what to say. I can't even say the name of the show. I guess that was Thunderclap Part 1. That's what that was.
I love when there's Part 1s and Part 2s of episodes. If we obviously we don't read what the titles are before before the show tells us, because a lot of times shows open and then they'll have the title of the episode on the screen. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. But if I had known that this was a Part 1 of something, then I would have gone into it being like, ooh, but I was already going into it like, oh my god, what's about to happen because of the content ending off with in the episode prior.
You know what? So our keyboard at the moment doesn't have a cable on it, and it's not wirelessly connected, and usually, I'm not really in a rush to... I wouldn't typically, okay, we'll be fine in the discussion using that. I need to go get the cable real quick.
That's fair.
Okay, I'm back. I got the cable. So I use it to hold shift and use the arrow keys so I can go frame by frame for the animation. And I don't know really where to begin other than the start of the episode and talking about it. I have too many favorites this season. Favorite episodes. I don't know how to place them. I don't want to be like, oh, this is the best episode of the season, because I've already said that and I can't compare them.
This episode came pretty close for me with the Choso episode.
Yeah.
I think that the Choso might, at least in my subjective opinion, because I just really loved all the signs and the fluorescent lighting.
Yeah.
And honestly, the pacing and stuff. The pacing for all these episodes is amazing because of what it does emotionally to the viewer. That kind of fluctuation of feeling like, oh, I'm on this high, and I'm like, whoa, and then they immediately take you out of that to take you somewhere else. But it's also like, wait, whoa, oh my god. And what they're doing with you is it's like as if you were on a roller coaster, but it's like, instead of a large, long dip, it goes really sharp and then really quick back up.
Yeah.
Really sharp, really quick back up. And that's how it feels. And so you're being jolted in your seat. You're on there's some types of rides that go up and down and up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And sometimes they kind of jolt you a little bit and don't actually drop you yet. And I feel like that's what watching Jujutsu Kaisen is. But this episode, especially once the fire came out more at the end, I was like, it's beautiful. I love it. The use of color here, the fluidity of flames, all of that was really making me happy.
I need to know who did the art direction for this episode, because I think that in atmosphere and everything, that was peak, and lighting and everything from the episode with Choso, right? And
they did some great things with lighting, but specifically because of use of shadow.
Exactly.
In this,
they had more emphasis on different color in the fight with Choso, but by far the thing that this is in this entire series, I have not seen better line work and character illustration ever in Jujutsu Kaisen, and maybe in anime. Like it was phenomenal. So like on the screen right now is the beginning of the episode, right? It's what you had pointed out, mirroring that breaking out of a window as Toji did to Fushiguro, which, like, structure, amazing, right? Yeah. Great start to the episode, but god damn, dude. Like, look at the line work, even in between these two frames. This is the stuff that makes you want to get anime tattoos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I can't believe it. I cannot believe that time and time again Jujutsu Kaisen is able to do this.
I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen as a show, I'm sure a lot of people find it very easy to find something within the show or the manga to get a tattoo of.
Yeah. So, you know what? I think that so many moments in this episode happened that were not only massively important and impactful for the story, but in terms of, like, resolution. I'm specifically talking about the Toji Megumi scene, because that's what happens next, their fight, which was absolutely wild. One, because Megumi's able to keep up to some degree.
Okay, so do you remember what we were... I'll give, obviously, refresher here. One of the things that we spoke about when the episode prior to this, episode 15, ended, was wondering why Megumi was the one pushed out of the building. We were like, is it because Megumi has the most potential out of the people in the room, or is it because of a recognition?
Yeah.
We get clarification the recognition is not happening yet. It happens possibly later, which we'll talk about, but it did not happen. That is not why Megumi was the one pushed out.
It's the focus. It's like, it's the, I forget what term they used, but it was the, like, it's not a curse. It's the seance's, like, ability of, like, finding that strongest, you know?
So we kind of get confirmation pretty early in that question of why was Megumi the one that was picked over Zenin, Nanami, and Maki. It is because he is like a untapped mine of potential that is continuously growing. If anything, I think that we could put some parallel here with something that is said about another character in this episode and put it on Megumi too, which is how Mahito is talked about as this continuously growing potential.
Yeah.
That could be far surpassing anyone and needs to be cultivated, needs to be protected and pushed forward into the world to continue to grow and to be protected at least until they're ready to kind of fly on their own and continue to get stronger. Megumi, I think, has always kind of been talked about that way, at least how I perceived Gojo's relationship with Megumi was that, you know, Gojo always said, like, I want to surround myself with, like, the young people that I, like, have amazing potential, that I view as, like, really strong, that are going to be, like, the next generation.
Yeah.
And are going to be even better. And Yuta is one of those. And I think Megumi is also one of those. Itadori is one of those.
One thing that I really appreciate with Megumi's character, too, is there was growth, significant growth that happened at the end of season 1 in terms of him using a domain expansion, and in terms of what Gojo said to him about not necessarily just using your last resort and be willing to stake your life on the line in order to defeat somebody. And I am so glad that in character growth that it's actually happened. It's not like, oh, that was the first punch to get that growth to happen, and it needs to be like a steady incline to get there. No, we saw payoff the other episode when Fushiguro Megumi was like to Nanami, I don't plan to die here, you know? And in this entire fight, he not once relied on his, I think it was like sacred treasure something. He never did, and he even reiterated
he wasn't
that
throw away his life.
Yeah, and he could push himself further than he normally would because there was that chance of being healed.
Right, we have him kind of being like, okay, I can try to make sure that the injuries, because obviously he's aware injuries are going to happen here because he's fighting this opponent, and he spends a lot of this fight using the hairs as a way to flee, get away, change the scenery, try to possibly get an advantage, but mostly get away from this man.
Yeah.
And I think that I would just really quick, is this like are we as a viewer starting to see what the natural actual enemies are for each of the characters at this point in Jujutsu Kaisen? Is it really that like Geto was the natural enemy of Gojo, and that maybe Mahito's the natural enemy to Megumi, and then Sukuna is the enemy to Itadori? And that those are the battles that we're starting to see happening but are going to also be happening in the future? Maybe.
I don't know. It's hard for me to not put Itadori still against Mahito mainly because of what happened last season.
I totally agree with that. I just like I have to remind myself there's an enemy within Itadori's body, which would then point to like that's who Itadori should be focusing, because Itadori right now has to fight a battle of regaining control over his body here. And that in itself, that is his natural enemy, is this like parasitic being inside of him that is fighting for control.
Yeah. Do you also interpret Sukuna saying that he would kill every human other than one, being Fushiguro being that one?
I think so.
Yeah, I do. It reminds me of what their fight ended with, you know, at the end of last season. God, dude, the hairs.
Yep.
The hairs, man. One of my favorite tropes or moments in anime is when a character throws something up in the air, and while it's up in the air, he does something in a ridiculously quick succession. But I've never seen it done in this way.
This was like he was on a keyboard in the sky. Like he was one of those his name's Wade in like Kim Possible, right? Where he has
I've
like
never
these
seen Kim
computers, and he's like this man behind the computer screens, and he has all these buttons and boards, and he's like this. That's what it looked like. Is he was like this mastermind technically creating this. It's like weapon.
What I love about Jujutsu Kaisen is the fights aren't just, oh, I'm stronger than you, I win. It's the intelligence and thought process behind that strength. It's like utilizing that strength in the environment you're in to come up with creative ways to fuck over your enemy.
Like when 5 minutes later after the hair scene, Fushiguro kicks on the sprinklers.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also like
electricity.
What it did for me in this episode was like show, because what did they show first? Obviously they showed this scene of Toji, right? They showed not only Toji's raw fucking strength, which immediately is what I thought that they were doing. I thought that it was like, okay, throw Playful Cloud, if that's even what you want to call it anymore.
It's not playful anymore. It's very non-playful.
Dangerous Cloud. Thunderclap.
Sharp
I don't know. Sharp Cloud. Pointy Cloud.
Pointy Cloud. I like Pointy Cloud. Let's go with that.
Okay, so when throwing Pointy Cloud up into the air, I was like, okay, you're going to stomp on the ground, and you're showing how strong you are by killing and exterminating every hair around. No, fuck that. You're actually kicking it up so you can break up pieces of concrete to fucking push into the hair's bodies.
It's bonus points, because when he stomps, when he does that and he kicks up the hairs, he has them all in this like easy radius too. Like all of the weapons are now in the air with the targets, and it's like he's just like boop 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 boop, and I'm like, what is even? As soon as this scene happened, I was like, I could never in a million years have imagined how this would have gone down, like written this myself, imagined up this scene, or how to defeat the hairs in this way. I would have never thought about like creating the weapon for yourself in that way, in that manner.
It's so awesome, and it's so gory, and you see the eyes and the blood and the pieces of the hair on the ground. It's not like censored or anything like that. It's amazing. I love it. And then reaches his hand up and grabs it, and then you see Megumi like, what the fuck just happened?
That's what we were like. That's the same face. So then we get into this more like almost comedic like element here with Panda that's happening right after that, which is like pretty interesting in terms of like where we're going in this little roller coaster of viewer emotions.
I wondered why at first.
Yeah, and
obviously we get the payoff, but
I think what's really awesome about utilizing this is that we're getting, other than getting POV from characters we haven't seen, which is incredibly useful for understanding all of the circumstances happening in this fight right now across the board and across the map, it also is really cool to peek into a mindset that is unlike who we've been following in terms of the Jujutsu sorcerers. Like, this is someone who's like, I can sense that this is way too strong for me and that I would die. Therefore, I am dreading this go-getter guy realizing where we have to go, and then I have to follow him.
Who has an actual
I'm in
human heart.
charge of him. And it's really fun, I think, because I think that he's a fun conversation to go off of from, like, Nanami, who's like, oh, that's above my pay grade. Oh, I have to, like, work overtime.
Yeah.
But also Nanami paints this picture that he's the lower bar of who should be entering these fights. And here we have a guy who I wrote it down because I wanted to talk about him a lot, because I thought that he might also be a fun conversation piece for talking about Jogo as well, in terms of personality and self-preservation. So I wrote this really quickly down, so I don't know if it's going to make any sense. Do we think man is strong? He's the example of self-preservation, of adequately estimating yourself more so than what Jogo does at the end. Like, Jogo realizes that he might have, like, overestimated his ability in comparison to Sukuna, but really he always knew all along that that wasn't the case. That's kind of what we get, is like, oh yeah, maybe nicely you'd be 8 fingers. And so he was kind of operating, maybe trying to, like, feel confident there, but he knew all along that Sukuna was stronger. And here we have this guy who's adequately, I think, maybe estimating his abilities in terms of, like, we are ants in comparison to some of the conflicts that are happening around us. And he probably feels that way before the special grades even start fighting, before he senses that he's already like, whatever's happening on B5 with Gojo is too much for me, you know?
We need to stall as long as possible.
So I don't have to go there. So
that this resolves itself, so I don't have to go over there. Yeah, and it's interesting because you have characters who are able to determine their own strength accurately, but say, I don't care. I'm going to run into the burning fire anyway because I hope that I can help, even if I die along the way. This guy's like, nah.
And so that's why I wrote down, so when I wrote down, do we think this man is strong? What I meant by that, in terms of my quick little notes, was that I wanted to talk about if we theorize that he was actually really strong, and who in comparison in terms of power levels would we stack him next to or near. And I was just in terms of theorizing. Yeah. Because this man is obviously telling us that compared to Sukuna, he is an ant. And compared to Gojo, he would die in going to whoever could seal Gojo. Yeah. So, curious about where he would actually stack up.
So, it's an impossible feat because we know nothing. Yeah. That being said, if I'm just gonna, like, make myself look like an idiot and place him, I'm gonna put around Nanami.
Okay. I think that he thinks...
Little worse, maybe.
I think he thinks that the people he's fighting right now, he could win against.
Agreed.
So, we don't know anything. The fun thing is,
we don't know anything about them.
We don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
We don't know how strong these people are, and we know that they're way outnumbered. Uh-huh. There's, like, some guy... Panda was like, there's 3 guys behind them, and then, you know... So, we have literally no way, other than just random theorizing and guessing, of how strong this guy actually is.
Which is a rarity in this series. I think that one of the things they do best is, like, obviously it's not, like, power level. That's not how you win a fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, right? It's way more than that. But they at least give us a little bit of information to be able to try to, you know, gauge of, like, who could fight who might land on top. But it's interesting here. We have nothing other than...
We know Panda's strong.
Yeah. But... there you go. That's it.
But here, it's so... I wonder if we'll actually see anything from him. Honestly, at this point, I don't know what the hell is
We don't
gonna
know if they're
happen.
alive.
Exactly. I don't know what the hell's gonna happen after the ending of this episode. So I'm like, I don't even think we'll see this man in action.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I don't know what possibly could be happening. The scene is exploded and buildings have fallen, and the landscape is gonna look nothing like how it originally looked when people were celebrating Halloween. So I did actually write, did Panda and Man, I don't remember if they said his name, so he's just gonna be Man.
Okay.
Did they move before now? It was so quick when Sukuna said now and they moved.
Well, we'll get there, right?
Did we move too fast? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like that was our first introduction to what we later learned to be part of Geto's followers.
Yes. Okay, so where are we now chronologically?
Now we're at one of my favorite parts of the episode, which there are many, of Megumi utilizing his intelligence and abilities in a way that I think parallel in such a rewarding way to what Toji did just a second ago with the hairs. Like, it's utilizing your strengths and combining it with your intellect to be able to have an advantage or to try to land an attack.
I think that what's also really interesting about this scene is that it further shows how much Megumi does not want to be throwing his life away right now, and that he does have a pretty accurate picture of the strength of his opponent here, and that he could possibly be mortally wounded and injured here. And so he's using this as, yes, an attack. Like, maybe it'll land, maybe it'll work really well. But it's also mainly like, hopefully this does something major so that I can get further away.
Yeah.
Because he immediately, like, leaps away after the explosion. I
love that he used the hair to spin a chair to get that attention diverted, you know? Just to give him a little bit more time so that he could set the sprinkler off and use Nue. And it's so
such
great.
A cool shot when he fills the windows.
Yeah. And
his face when he's running away is like, oh my god, I need to get away. I'm pushing my body further than I should. Ieri is around.
Do you think
here.
He just tanked it? Do you think Toji just tanked that entire thing? Because it's like when he jumps out of the window and I'm like, oh, he just like had an explosion happen to him and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter.
He has not a scratch on him.
Yeah.
They have not animated any, other than his scar, there is not a scratch on him from any of the fights that he's been in the last 2 episodes.
So one of Fushiguro's lines here is really awesome to me. So like in talking, his speed is on par with Sukuna when he fought him. He brings up, don't try to follow him by sight. Focus on the timing. I absolutely love that method of fighting. Like don't even try to follow him with your eyes. Feel the timing of when you think the attack's going to land.
And I think that it is already shown to us that he'll start to think that way by how he speaks about Toji's fighting style originally in this episode. When Megumi first creates the hair like cloud and Toji runs through it, it's like he comments about the movement being like almost instinctual, like he's just moving even though he doesn't know where he's going.
Yeah.
That same kind of thought of like, you're not going to go with your senses right now. You're not going to go with logic right now. You're going to try to feel the energy of the space and the energy of who you're fighting.
Think about everything Megumi does in this sequence, right? In my opinion, he only does the sprinkler like move to give himself a little bit of space and time to be able to set up like a plan of action here. And he has distance in between him and Toji. Toji steps forward as he releases hairs as a distraction perhaps, or a means of defense. Toji then utilizes those hairs as stepping stools, which Fushiguro accounts for. The second that he's about to step off of one of them, Fushiguro simultaneously releases his technique on them while going into his inventory to pull out a sword. And so Toji loses footing.
His hidden inventory, but
okay. but he loses his footing,
It's so
which gives
good.
Fushiguro
And
the
it means that the attack is going to be landed in a it kills
lethal
you
area.
instantly. Yeah, why do I never know exactly what word to use for that? Like, every time I try to think of a word to use for, like, a very grave injury that could kill you, I never really can find the word at the time that we are talking about it.
But it's mind-blowing, like, the amount of, like, I don't know, thought behind this fight here. And then I think this is when Megumi realizes, like, sure, I've, like, thought out all of this and he's done a great job, but there's a certain amount of, like, pure raw strength and capability that Toji has that you can't account for. And that's just him backing away in an instant after he realizes and notices the technique that Megumi just used. Mm-hmm. That was it. That's when it all clicked for him. And it led into the scene with what's our guy's name? Naobito talking about, you know, Megumi and his potential future. And I thought of hundreds of different ways in between last episode and this that Toji could be utilized and used in the story and what might happen. Sukuna versus Toji at some point. What would that look like? All this. Not once did I think of this, and this is the best thing I've ever seen. This is one of the best moments of Jujutsu Kaisen, period, for me.
I think that what made this moment make even more sense to the viewer, where it felt so perfect and not unconceivable of having been an option, is that we saw Toji and Gojo's conversation in Hidden Inventory, and we saw Toji's death. We saw that whole interaction. We saw Gojo, you know, meeting Megumi for the first time. And because we have that, this moment feels so perfectly
it's emotional,
and
man,
calculated and crafted so that it hits emotionally in a way that none of my viewers are going to be so utterly, like, shocked once this happens and once they've processed it, because I've already opened the door for this emotional thing to happen.
Yeah.
But they just never would have guessed that it would.
Yep. It's such an awesome decision to make, because when you're able to write in a character returning from death like that, it's like it throws the viewer off.
An unpredictable, he's gonna try to kill everyone anyway character, even though he's now seanced in a way that he wants to kill everyone.
And regardless of motive or intention, the matter of the fact is that he might as well have saved Fushiguro's life. He might as well have, and when they were in that domain expansion. I know they were on their way out, but he confirmed that fight wasn't going to injure Megumi anymore, and not by intent or motive, but that's a fact. And then in this scene, what he did was again secure Megumi's safety, but
this time intentionally.
And he did it, of course, because there's a certain amount, I imagine, of will that he doesn't have, because he's been, by the seance, you know, told to go after the strongest around him and try to kill them. And he ended that here.
It's similar, obviously, because we have it already in the show with Geto and the brain.
Yep.
That the hand was able to move with the actual true will of Geto. Here we have Toji pushing past the murderous intent created by being brought back, like, in this way.
Yeah. I didn't expect it, and it was so immediate. And I think that the execution of it, no pun intended, was amazing. It was great.
I think that you also probably agree that the choice to not show us it happening initially, but to show us the arm, and then to show the blood splatter on the arm, to have us be like, wait, what is that? What is happening right now? What has he done? What's happening to his arm? And then to actually see what he's done.
It's amazing.
And jaw on the floor.
You know the best part of it? It's like, sure, one of my favorite parts of it is the dialogue and him just saying, so it's not Zenin, after Fushiguro says his name. It's that his eyes go back to normal. It's like, it's phenomenal. It's perfect. This is like one of the best pieces of writing and moments in Jujutsu Kaisen.
Do you want to know what makes it even better too? Like, because obviously it could obviously get better. There's so much in it. It's like, oh, did it even need to get better?
Yeah.
he doesn't tell Megumi who he is.
Doesn't need to.
We don't have Megumi being like, Dad? Oh my god, how do I feel about these conflicting emotions right now? Like, we have Megumi being like, what the hell just happened? This guy
what the hell was
trying to kill me. Now he's not, and now he's someone else. Like, we have him in this confused state. He's not necessarily emotionally encumbered, but he's, like, confused. He's, like, low energy, so still easy and susceptible from a behind attack.
Yeah. And what happens before the behind attack by my least favorite character in this entire show? He pisses me off so much. Is Megumi saying, no, I should make sure Maki and the others are safe first. That puts their ability at being alive completely on the table for me. And it also makes me think that Naobito will have survived this, and he's going to be the person to tell Megumi who Toji was.
I think that Megumi does need to hear who that was, and I would say that the only person that could give confirmation to him about this happening is Naobito.
Because Gojo's sealed.
Right, but Gojo also wasn't there.
Exactly.
So, and the guy transformed back to normal.
Yep.
So the literal only person. So either Megumi is never gonna know.
Which I think would be okay.
If he never knew.
Yeah.
I think also agree that that could be totally okay that he never knew.
Yeah.
But I also agree that that's more room and evidence, as we've already collected a lot of evidence after last episode, that to try to protect our hearts that, like, no, they're okay, they're safe, because the two girls were able to survive Jogo, you know? So also, just quick, I know we already passed the conversation, but this line was really great. Perfected
I
form
have that
of
too.
Maki.
Yep, that was like very early on in the episode, but that is huge to me.
It shows that so this figuring out that this man was a part of his adjacent family isn't going to be that much of a shock to Megumi. Obviously, the dad thing's gonna be a shock.
Yeah. But
even the understanding that he was in a relation to him wouldn't necessarily be, because he already saw him in comparison to Maki.
Yeah. I think that also, in my opinion, puts a little bit of a drop in the Maki is still alive bucket, because Maki
that's what Maki could be.
And Maki herself witnessed it. She saw that in front of her.
You know, honestly, that would probably, if Maki survives, that was probably majorly inspirational. That was probably like, see, I've been telling you guys all along that I could do this.
Or like, awesome. That's my benchmark. That's where I need to somehow figure out how to get to. Yeah.
And because we were seeing Toji again in modern times in the story, it, I think, would lend more to, if Maki's alive, the potential in Jujutsu Kaisen, in the story, in the narrative, to get that character to that level.
Yeah.
Eventually.
God,
the potential.
Damn. Looking at the next sequence of Jogo versus Sukuna, God, the animation's so cool, and the lighting. It's
the animation was cool, but once the scene started, the music was like, I wrote down, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but when we immediately went to this fight between Jogo and Sukuna again, the music was very Demon Slayer. In, like, the best way, like, that kind of creepy, I don't know if it's like a choir-like, but it's distorted.
Interesting.
And it feels otherworldly. I think in, like, Demon Slayer, type of music like that is used when there's demons involved. You know, there's this otherworldly feeling about it, this inhuman energy to the tone of the music, and they started playing that music as soon as the fight started.
Yeah. And
it really got you to this almost godlike level. Like, we are now in the sky watching a fight with, like, non-humans.
Yeah. I'm trying to... That, like, ethereal, like...
Yeah, and then it picks up more, and
okay, I see what you mean.
It got me into exactly where I felt like I needed to be to watch this fight.
So interesting, like, I'm typically, like, very, like, score heavy, but I was so, like, focused on the animation. Yeah, but you're so right. After even hearing, like, a second of it, you hear, like, the choir in the background. I'm sure
we'll go back and be, like, rewatching some of these scenes.
Oh, for sure.
And I will say, pay attention to what the music is doing when you rewatch this scene.
Yeah. You know what, what the fire gives me this episode? like the use of the animation with fire, it gives me The Last Airbender, like cartoon series, and like in its best moments. Like in its best moments, how they utilize fire and lighting is like drop dead gorgeous. And this is like perfect. It's so well done. The shadows are amazing.
That's one of my favorite things about watching so many different shows, not only like in the channel, but able to think about shows we watched when we were younger, that we loved. Finding similarities of things that we loved in other things that we love just makes the enjoyment factor of those things that we're watching that much higher. Like when I'm like, that music reminded me of like awesome, creepy Demon Slayer moments with demons, that makes me incredibly happy. Hearing a voice actor that sounds like Daru from Steins Gate in this episode makes me incredibly happy. All of those elements, like, of relating to other shows, Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of like the greatest things ever.
Yeah.
It is a staple of like my childhood and growing up. It was a staple in my household.
Yeah.
Whole family watched it together. It was a thing we all did.
I just can't believe it. Like, I'm going frame by frame here, right? This is a great point of view shot, first of all. This is before Jogo, like, elicits any fire, and there's no shading on his hands because of it. But then, like, okay, next frame, you have the lighting change, and you can see the shadows. And then as it progresses, like, it dims out the rest of our view other than the exposure on the light, because that's how the shading would look how dark it gets. It's awesome. It's so cool. And while that's happening, Sukin is progressing towards him and reacting to the shadow of the light.
At one point, if you go back, it's almost like his eyes are lit up for a second by the light, and then it goes back to shadow.
Like there. Yeah, like the two embers look like pupils. Oh my god.
So yeah, it freaks you out for a second, because you're like, are those eyes, or are they like embers of this fireball that's being created? But they're so perfectly placed that it gives more of that like scary, this person's lunging towards you look, even if it's not actually his eyes.
Yeah, and then immediately disappears from frame, because of course that's how fucking fast he is.
Just like Toju.
We get to see the face. That's terrifying.
That face is like a Halloween jack-o'-lantern face.
Oh my god. Seeing like the ember itself looks like it was cut in half.
And then all the fingers.
Bro, Jogo stays losing arms and fingers.
But he grows them back really easily, so...
Yeah,
not
that's
that
true.
major.
Oh my god.
More just impressive to see him like pepperoni sliced like that. It's fun.
It's just so phenomenal.
The use of bugs in this episode too, which now that I think about it, no freaking duh. We had a heavy usage of like seeing bugs in the fights. We get it in this fight, but then also in the ghetto family scene. But we have Man, that I don't remember his name because he's Man.
Yeah.
Talking about how they're ants.
Yeah.
In comparison to what's happening in this episode.
It reminds me of the ants and the baseball episode from last season as well. They did like bugs in the show. I cannot wait for the day that, well, I can wait for the day Jujutsu Kaisen's done, because I don't want it to happen. But I am very excited to inevitably one day read the manga and see the paneling, because there are some shots that are just so creative that I'm like, okay, either that was a stroke of genius that needs to be appreciated by the mangaka or by the animation director of the episode. And this is one of them. This is, look at this. This is like Sukuna dodging Jogo's attacks, frames to the thermometer, right? The temperature outside. And you can see it just climbing up.
That's amazing. Oh. See, I've never read a manga that had action or fights in it. Therefore, I would love to see, and also would be wary of seeing a manga that was like, had these awesome epic fights that I've seen animation versions of.
Yeah.
And with color and just really, really awesome dynamic scenes and storyboarding. So I would be like, how does that translate? Like, how would that look on paper in black and white? How do you... I've just never read a manga that did action and fighting, because I only really would read romance manga, and that those tend to not really have a lot of fighting and action scenes in it. So I would be really intrigued to see what Jujutsu Kaisen... I would really be intrigued to go back to, like, one of my favorite episodes, the Choso episode from the season, and see what that looked like in the manga.
I would too. I think one of the only action manga I've ever read is Dragon Ball. And so, like, I'm kind of in the same vein as you. But phenomenal sequence with the thermometer, and then it goes into more action, and this is so interesting.
Like a filter from Photoshop, like is it called cutout or something?
And it's like, it's so wild to look at, because like you can see, it's just the stylization this episode.
They were able to create that kind of illusion of the air is filled with a bunch of debris and it's foggy because of that,
without losing any detail. Like, that looks so cool, dude. Oh, and we're gonna have to edit all this in.
The illusion of it, yeah. Honestly, this discussion is gonna have a lot of it's gonna need some editing.
I love the glass too, because you can kind of see a reflection. It's a different art style now, but you can see a reflection of the previous art style. Yeah, going up to I know the part happens soon where you see the piece of glass turn into like molten.
I think that was much more once they're both facing each other on the battlefield. So I don't know if it was like pretty soon here in what are we 13 minutes into it.
Yeah.
I think that might have been a little later.
I know this is a weird thing to like enjoy or compliment, but during the sequence with Sukuna and Jogo, when they're like hand to hand, you're like, okay, they're fighting, normal. Sukuna blinks for a second. Like, I don't know why I love the fact that Sukuna blinks here.
He didn't need to, but he did, and we appreciate the little things.
I adore it.
I love when we get all those fingers coming off again.
Yeah. It's amazing. I can't believe what's the budget? How much animation went into this? This sequence was great, too, when we're throwing Jogo, and we only get a blur of it.
There's trash. And the trash gets picked up, and there's a straw in a lid, and it goes flying. There's a can that gets broken.
What a great structured shot. The composition's amazing, and then to include the can and the transparent cup with the straw is amazing. I love the shots from inside the building tracking Jogo.
I think what it does is it helps remind you all of these shots that weren't necessarily necessary because there's no character in them are all just to remind you of the scale that this fight is taking up, how far this scene has been taking up across this battlefield. We are going everywhere and anywhere, but also it's completely empty. Yeah. Which we get a line at some point in the episode about thank goodness Inumaki was able to clear out all of the transfigured humans and all of the humans.
Yeah. Seeing Jogo utilize lava to destroy this part of the city, but
keep this
yeah, for sure. Up. He makes hands out of the lava to grab these two buildings and smash them
and you see him controlling it. Yeah, very cool.
And then this reminds me of Gojo in Hidden Inventory.
Yes.
It's he's surpassed humanity.
His fight with Toji, I think he has a very similar pose in the air.
Yeah. God, everything's great.
Everything is great.
There's one sequence coming up too. The shadow on Sukuna. Oh my god. I love how it changes too. There's a sequence that it almost looks like it's a skull on Sukuna's face that's being made. God, he's pushing him through so many levels.
I really, for Shadow, once they landed through the building and the moon lit up and his eyes and the nose were blacked out because of the shadow, that shot, it was the use of shadow there in terms of the lighting to make him look like the bringer of death.
Yeah.
He literally looks like he's a Grim Reaper here to take your soul. He looks like the bringer of death.
I'm very thankful that Jogo was I can't use domain expansion. You just outpower it. I don't want to
do a tug of war.
Yeah, so we can see all of this.
Yeah, thank goodness.
I was so curious as to why they were putting the panda plot into this episode, and it all made sense when Sukuna just showed up to play more games.
I think that the bug thing. The bug comment is the through line. That feeling of insignificance, like we are smaller to what is actually going on here. There is other people that are so much stronger that people and creatures and spirits that far surpass us, that we are just insignificant little ants.
Yeah.
That will do whatever they say because of this commanding presence they have. Panda and Man just listening to Sukuna.
Yeah.
Where last episode we saw the two girls, yes, they were terrified, but one of Geto's like girls decided to push past her fear in order to not only hold a conversation with Sukuna, but ask something of him, like bribery sense.
Yeah.
But Panda and Man were like, yeah, no, we're not fucking with Sukuna. We're gonna do what he says right here. And as soon as he says now, we are out of here.
What do you think it is to, like, that Sukuna is able to utilize all, like, many different, like, elements? Like, I'll fight you using your own specialty. Fuga.
That shocked me.
Open. It's like
he has all these abilities that he can open.
It reminds me of like obviously Fushiguro's able to like manifest these things, but it's like you're bringing something out and it looks incredible. Oh my god, talk about lighting. Look at the flames. They're gorgeous.
I appreciate that they look different.
It looks like stained glass.
Jogo's. Yeah, there's other colors they're using in it, like purples and greens as it's flickering, which is a really interesting touch to add a few different colors that aren't red and orange.
Oh my god.
But definitely them having a different look and appearance to their flames is much appreciated. Like, Jogo's is very lightning-esque.
Yeah.
And then Sukuna's is almost more fluid and watery.
Seeing the glass, oh my god.
That's what you were looking for,
yeah,
right?
It's so fucking cool.
Melting.
I think the best sequence, by far, is when the aspect ratio changes and you see Sukuna pulling back the fire arrow. Okay, come on. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Cool.
And seeing, like, just his fingers that are, like, black in frame because they're holding it. Oh my god. It's so cool, dude. I love it. I love this show so much.
And then what happens?
The conversation with Hanami.
Jogo's dead.
Yeah.
That's what happens, is that we get this weirdly emotional and humanizing scene of death here for Jogo, which is incredibly loved by me as a viewer of this series. Because it's very complex, this idea of like these were cursed spirits that have friendships and connection and want to get revenge for each other and care for each other and can not only speak, which already shows that they are special grade and that they are going to be tough opponents, but this idea that they have almost like these human hearts.
Yeah.
Like that, we get that line about Panda, that he has more of a human heart than I do. That's a character that's not human. Why else would we have a line like that in this episode for someone on our side, for another character, prior to this interaction, if they weren't supposed to be linked?
Yeah.
In terms of how the viewer feels or is able to connect through the series.
What do you think of Sukuna's like advice, or I guess like hindsight advice? Like this is where you went wrong. Like your calculations. No, you should have just burnt everything around you without those calculations or plots. You know, and like, I think that like that is true like, and a true antagonist in its purest sense and form, right? Not, I am going to do this evil thing to reach this evil goal, to do this, like, and I'm going to accomplish it by all these different means. It's, no, I'm pure evil, evil incarnate, and I'm going to burn everything down.
It also parallels Panda and the lines of the man who is saying that this Panda has more of a human heart than he does.
Yeah.
And this is like that idea of the fact that Jogo didn't just burn everything down, which we can obviously see from this episode. If no one else except Gojo, if Gojo didn't exist and Gojo was sealed, why do you need Sukuna?
Yep.
Why did Jogo need Sukuna if we can obviously see that he literally could have molten lava the entire city?
Yeah.
So it really does add this element of like, Jogo did all those plots and planning because there were other things that he wanted to be involved in this. He had friends he wanted to protect. He had people, cursed spirits that he saw potential in, that he wanted to be able to live a life, you know, a certain life that he felt all the cursed spirits should live, and that this person had such great potential, Mahito, that they needed to be
putting Mahito number one,
senior in the group, you know, to be put in this special pedestal place in the group. And so obviously, because of Jogo's emotions, his desire for what the future would look like, his desire to be in the same position as humans. I think that was the line that Sukuna used when Sukuna was processing how Jogo felt. That because of his desires there, these very like innately human desire to be accepted or to be safe, or and have your friends be safe and them all have a respectable place in this world where they can live happily, is very emotional and very connected and very like human, in comparison to just burning everything down without thinking or considering anyone or anything.
It makes you think though, like, is Geto, I'm saying Geto because it's easier than being like the brain within Geto, but are Geto's ideals inherently flawed and fucked because they don't abide by the same principles as Sukuna's saying that Jogo should have? Or is Geto working under the same guise as Uraume, and like they're together in this? Or is Uraume manipulating Geto so that Sukuna can be revived?
It sounds like this person has actual knowledge of Sukuna. Could be even how we came to have all the fingers or find so many fingers.
Like a student, maybe?
Someone
how are they alive
who's lived
still?
a very long time, because they're probably a cursed spirit, right?
I don't know. It's been a long time.
They're not a human that's lived this long. I'm going to say that. They have to be something else.
I don't know. I mean, Tengen is able to live through vessels. Like...
Oh, like another person that has vessels?
Maybe.
I mean, it wouldn't be unheard of to think of that idea when we already have that idea of vessels in not only this season, but just like the fact that Itadori is almost like a vessel for Sukuna.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I big question mark to me. Mm-hmm. I feel like I don't have any information to put it together other than like, maybe if Uraume, I'm probably butchering that, is on the same side as Geto, then Geto's ability of being able to like swap brains, that is the definition of elongating life, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be these people who've been around.
Right, yeah, we don't really know where they match up in terms of ideals and path. We don't know yet. Obviously, this person has some knowledge of how to respect Sukuna, or has some history with Sukuna where Sukuna won't immediately try to kill them.
Yeah.
But after that point of conversation, we don't know how the conversation would go after that. Like, is this person going to ask Sukuna anything, ask Sukuna to do anything, to join any side? It
feels more like a reunion.
But it feels more like a faithful follower that's finally there to take your orders.
Yeah.
You know?
As long as Itadori doesn't have anything to say about it or do about it. But I have no idea.
But that could be interesting, too, for Itadori to wake up here in this moment to have a conversation with this person that knew Sukuna. That could be interesting.
What do you think the big white guy with anklets is?
It's a really wonderful question.
He's glowy.
He's glowing. So, we get the big guy with the Geto family, but he wasn't glowing there. And we only see feet here, so I'm like, is it any way that is the Geto family guy? Because we see the other two, and we've already seen the girls.
Oh,
but we haven't seen the bigger man.
I think that's a great guess. One, because they did a huge delay in showing us that guy's face.
Mm-hmm.
as well as who are the factions on the battlefield. At the moment, we have, like, you know, Jogo's side, Geto's side, we have our side, and if there was a third side, which we now know that there is, it's the followers of Geto. I was gonna go with, like, is
and even they are split.
Yeah.
Even the followers of Geto are split in 3.
Yeah, I was gonna go with, like, okay, maybe if this is the chance that Uraume splits off from Geto, because Sukun is now revived. This is somebody in her, you know, clan or posse, but I think that you make a really good point there. I think that it probably is that guy.
Oh, it's all I can
With the
go
heart
off
on his
of
chest.
is because he was just a bigger character. He looked like he would be really strong and have very thick calves. So that's all I can go off of. The ankle bracelets. And so he's shirtless, right?
Yeah.
He has like tattooed hearts on his chest. But I didn't really pay attention to his lower half of his body and his outfit. Just some pants.
And
he's just
like
a bigger guy. So maybe he has some sort of technique where he can like bulk up his muscles.
Maybe.
I could see that. But that's all I could guess in terms of whoever that is that's approaching, you know?
Yep. God, what an episode.
Hopefully Megami will be safe.
God, I need to rewatch it 1,000 times. 1,000,000 times. I loved it. Wow. I feel like for the rest of the season, they're just going to have stick figures because they blew out their entire animation here.
Oh, sorry, guys. We ran out of time.
And I'd be okay with it. I would have been, worth it. All right. That's all I have you.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And we hope to see you next time.